I haven't seen the live show up yet.
It says live at the top.
Okay. Great. Welcome. I am Xinfei Guo, an assistant professor at the Shanghai Jiaotong University in China, and also a IEEE SSCS Young Professionals Committee member. I will be the moderator of the panel discussion today. So IEEE is world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. Before we begin, please note a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are engagement tools you are using. All tools are resizable and movable. Move them around to make the most of your space. If you have questions for today's panelists, you can submit them through the Q&A widget on your screen or click the purple Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If the question you're asking is for a particular panelist, please remember to state that too. Our Q&A session will be moderated by the Webinar for Young Excellence Committee Coordinator, Dr. Carmen Lei, an assistant professor from the University of Macau. If you click the green resources icon at the bottom of your screen, you'll find more information about today's event and future events. Finally, the on-demand link for today's event will be emailed to all registrants approximately 2 hours after today's session. If you would like to tweet about this event, please use the hashtag IEEE Learn. Before we kick off the actual panel session, I will start with a short introduction of who we are and what we do. As young professionals and students, you make up more than 30% of our overall population membership, and you are the future of IEEE SSCS. As the SSCS Young Professionals Committee, we strive to address different needs and interests of our younger members with initiatives like this webinar series. Selected the benefit of SSCS membership for young professional members, including the following. Access to the SSCS Resource Center, which contains technical tutorials, short courses, and webinars, distinguished lectures in your local setting, and opportunities to apply for different grants and awards. And on top of that, you can develop leadership skills and make professional connections by becoming a local or global YP leader. Here, I will cover some activities that our committee has been working on. So we have the upcoming mentoring event as part of ESERC and EDIRC conferences. The topic of the mentoring event is how to navigate academia and industry in a virtual world. Mentoring for young professionals. The event is open to all SSCS and EDS members, in addition to the conference attendees. You can register for the event on their website. We have also launched an online mentoring platform. With this platform, you can connect with leading SSCS mentors and mentees from all over the world, on pace and time. If you haven't done so, please go and sign up through the SSCS website. So right now, SSCS is actively looking for a student outcome representative. Eligible SSCS student can apply to be part of administrative committee. This is the first time ever SSCS has such a role. Please consider this great opportunity. To learn more, please go to the SSCS website. The deadline is November 1st. In addition to the activity I just mentioned, we also host webinars for Young Excellence, which is a quarterly webinar series dedicated, but not limited to young professionals members. This webinar series complements the monthly SSCS technical webinars, which focus mostly on technical tutorials and developments. So the list of webinars we did in the past is shown in this slide. As part of this webinar series today, we bring you to the panel discussion, Acing the Industry Job Hunt, a conversation with HR and managers. So when you get out of school, you are not sure about what it's like to work in the industry. Also, what's the difference between a research and product team? How to choose between a technical giant company or versus a startup? Are you disappointed by not being noticed, submitting a well-prepared resume? And you wonder why your professional network isn't working. And you didn't get the job offer, even you nailed the interview. And you wonder if you ask inappropriate questions. What about if you should negotiate an offer and how? We are honored to have 4 outstanding speakers from different tech companies that are across different domains and also geographic domains today. So firstly, we have Ms. Kimberly Hall, who is the University Recruiting Program Manager for NXP in the US and Canada. She has held this role for 5 years. She's also a registered yoga teacher. And secondly, we have Dr. Edith Benny from Facebook, our Silicon at the Facebook Reality Labs, where she leads the Silicon research projects driving the future of AR devices. She has been a well-known expert and leader in low power and adaptive circuit techniques, has been in the leadership role in many top conferences, including being the PPC chair for the upcoming SEC. Thirdly, we have Mr. Eric Neviaski, who is a legend in the engineering community. He had a very interesting childhood. He was actually raised by wolves during his earlier formative years. Professionally, he has a highly productive career across multi-domains. He has been one of the co-founders of Cadence Analog and Mixed Signal Design Practice. So recently, he is with Blue Cheetah Analog, which is a rising startup develops generators that produce customized designs in different technologies. And last but not least, we have Mr. Matt Scott, who is the co-founder and CEO of Malang Technologies, which is a China-based startup. Matt has over 17 years R&D experience in computer vision and machine learning. Before this, he spent over 10 years working at Microsoft Research. So firstly, I want to say thank you to all 4 speakers and welcome our audience. So to begin with, each of the speakers will start with their position statements about acing the industry job hunt. And then the second part of this webinar will be a moderated Q&A. And the final part will be audience Q&A, which is going to be moderated by Dr. Carmen Lei. Okay, let's get started. I think all of us are eager for the opinions from the speakers. So let's start the first part now. Kimberly, what's your view on acing the industry job hunt?
Hello. So for me, I think the important thing is to take every opportunity that you have to engage with the recruiters, with other company representatives, and with hiring managers. And you should do that in the way that seems to work for those other folks. And not everything will work with everyone. For example, for me, our program doesn't use LinkedIn to recruit for interns and new grads. So reaching out to me on LinkedIn and using one of your in-mail messages and trying to connect that way doesn't really work. So it's important to know what each of your target companies, how their program works, so that you can reach out and connect in a way that is most effective. So that may mean paying attention to, if you're in the U.S. and your school is on the Handshake platform, engaging on the Handshake platform. That's the way NXP does most of our student engagement. Go to when we're back to in-person events, go to industry nights, go to information sessions, and really start to connect with people at those programs there. I think that's really the best way to get yourself noticed and get in front of the right people. Having a good resume, interviewing well, those things are important. And particularly with the resume, that's kind of table stakes, right? You've got to have a good resume, but you've also got to make those connections. So hope to guide you all on how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. Thank you. And you want to share on your slide and
Sure.
Present some of your views? Yeah.
All right. So at NXP, our tagline is "Secure Connections for a Smarter World." And we are evolving to anticipate and automate in a lot of different ways. Our 60 years of combined experience and expertise operations in more than 30 countries in a number of spaces: automotive, industrial, mobile, smart home, smart city, and communication infrastructure. And in any smart device, we've got areas where the devices have to sense, they have to think, they have to connect, and they have to act. And we are positioned across all these required building blocks to make devices safe and secure. So for the job hunt, the most important thing is to align your brand with the company needs and values. So you have to understand, like I said, the tools and techniques to be selected. You've got to make sure that your resume addresses everything in the job description. Though be sure, if you're customizing your resume or cover letter for each position, double check your submissions, make sure that you're sending the right letter to the right company. If you send a cover letter or resume to NXP telling me how much you want to work at Qualcomm, that's not going to get you very far. So, and that's a real example. So be sure that you're really careful with that stuff. And then don't be so specific that you won't be considered for anything else within the company. If you say your objective on your resume is to be a design engineer, then nobody's going to consider you for anything else, which may be a good fit for you as well. And then, like I mentioned, use the tools that the recruiters use. So if you're using Handshake, make sure that you're really using that, and LinkedIn, because a lot of companies do use LinkedIn for their college recruiting. Put all the keywords that you can, use the tool that recruiters use to find you. So add all the keywords of all the skills that you're interested in. Add all your location preferences, anywhere that you're willing to move, because recruiters can use these tools to search for these things. Indicate your industry interests, your role interests, et cetera, so that you show up in those targeted searches as someone that we should reach out to. And then use GitHub to share samples of your coding if applicable, and share that link on both your resume and on your LinkedIn page. So your brand is everything you want to be known for professionally, including your experience, your skills, and your interests. So you need to identify for yourself what are your strongest competencies. Share both your actions and the results on any projects that you've worked on. And be prepared to talk through specific examples. If you put something on your resume, you better know that project backwards and forwards and be able to talk about it. If you're not sure, check in with your past coworkers, project teammates, and any supervisors who can help you identify strengths and remind you of specific examples. You can also take a skills assessment. I keep clicking the wrong place to move my slides. Sorry. You've also got to understand what the customers. so the company is looking for, and make sure you're prepared to show how you can meet that need. So review the job description in detail. Look at the company values. That is often available on the company's website, or it's something you can ask in your initial conversations. What is the company value? And ask about the company mission statement. That way you'll be prepared to share how you can use how you've already used the tools that they say you'll need experience using. You can demonstrate that you share the values and can demonstrate them and contribute to the mission, and demonstrate how you solve technical problems and achieve results. With being a young engineer, somebody coming out looking for an internship or a new grad position, none of the interviewers expect you to be an expert. What they expect you to be able to communicate is how you solve problems, that you have the technical basics in order to meet the needs of the role and grow into it. And then that you can display the values. So whatever those are, teamwork, collaboration, being action-oriented, those kinds of things are really important. And when it's time for the interview, also review the LinkedIn pages of hiring managers and any other interviewers so that you'll know what's important to those people and you can make a connection with them. So there's two types of interviews. There's the technical interviews and the behavioral interviews. And in the technical interviews, they'll ask you to demonstrate technical skills. You may be asked to draw diagrams or flowcharts and how you would write some simple code. But in the behavioral interviews, what the interviewer is looking for is how your past behavior is the fact that past behavior predicts future behavior. So they want to know how you've behaved in certain situations. And they're looking for answers in what they call the STAR format, where you describe the situation, the task you were expected to accomplish, the actions that you personally took, and the results of that action. So be prepared to talk about failures and what you learned from them. It's okay to tell about a project that didn't work out. It's really about your problem-solving skills and what you did with the failure after. And they may be addressing specific competencies that they've assigned to the position or to their corporate values. And you can find information about competencies just by doing a quick Google search. And you can sort of look at the competencies and see what you think of those competencies might apply to the roles. So for example, here's NXP's values and behaviors. Our values are raising the bar, engaging curiosity, taking initiative, working together, and developing deep core competence. And we've assigned 2 competencies to each of those values. And then we build everything on a foundation of total quality. So you could go and look up competencies and find something around action-oriented, or what you think maybe taking initiative means, and be prepared to talk about how you demonstrated that you're action-oriented, or be prepared to talk about how you have, under raising the bar, the second one down here is customer focus. How have you focused on the needs of a customer in order to solve a problem? So for some sample questions under action-oriented, and you'll often find this if you search on competencies and come across some and look for some sample interview questions. So for action-oriented, the question might be, give me an example of a time when you initiated an idea that became a plan and then a reality. For customer focus, we ask the question, describe a situation when you identified an opportunity that benefited the customer, and what was the result? So there's lots of samples of these types of questions out there, and you should take a look at those as part of your preparation for the interview and come up with your examples. And again, we're looking for the STAR format for those behavioral interviews. Situation, who was involved? What was the situation? What were the circumstances? The task is, what was your role in the task or situation? Describe your specific role in the project and what you were trying to achieve. And your interviewer, if they're good at this, will direct you not to say what we on the team did, but what I personally did, because they want to know what your actions were. And what were the actions? How did you approach it? How did you do it? Walk through the steps that you took and describe your thought process. And then finally, what was the result? What was the impact of your action, and how did it work out? And then all of that will help you do really well in the interview. If you give the interviewer what they're looking for, it will identify you as a person who has the thought processes and the thought models that they're looking for. And then this last tip is a personal pet peeve of mine. In my downloads folder, I easily have 100 files named resume. So you want to make sure that recruiters and hiring managers can find your resume in their download folder. My favorite was final resume version 2 final. Don't do that. Don't send that out to potential employers. Name your resume something that will make it easy for the recruiter and manager to find you again later. Your name, what you're studying, and what you're looking for. So here we've got Avis Burton. He's a student for a bachelor's in electrical engineering, and he's looking for an internship for the summer of 2022. Naomi Nagata has a master's in chemical engineering, and she is graduating in May of 2022, so she's looking for a full-time position. This will make you so much easier to find later, and your recruiters and your hiring managers will appreciate you. So at NXP, these are the types of roles we fill, both for internships and graduate hire positions. I'll just let you look quickly at those. And when our positions are ready to go, they'll be posted both on nxp.com/careers as well as on the Handshake platform that I mentioned a couple of times. That's for the US. In other countries where we also have pretty aggressive university programs, I can't speak to specifically how their programs work, other than that I know that the positions will be posted on nxp.com/careers. So that is part of your research to do with all of the companies that you're looking at. And that's it for me.
All right. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And you shared a lot of tips that are usually ignored by a lot of candidates. Thank you. All right, so next let's switch to Edith now. Maybe what's your view on acing the industry job hunt? Maybe you can start with your slides.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks a lot for Kimberly for the tips before. I think all of those apply to many companies, so that was really good to hear. I thought I would share first with my personal journey to show how things can change over time, and we should not be fixed on a specific career, because, and I think that's going to be even more true for young professionals now. You're going to change a lot in your life, change a lot of jobs and locations. So just a quick clarification on Facebook versus Facebook Reality Labs versus Oculus, because there may be some confusion sometimes. So Facebook, Facebook owns Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Facebook, and Oculus. So Oculus is the brand for the devices we are building for augmented reality and virtual reality. And the organization building those AR, VR devices is called Facebook Reality Labs. And so I'm part of that organization. So my world, I think that's important to understand also where people do come from, so that you can ask the right questions. So I was born in France a long time ago, unfortunately. That picture is really, really important for me, because that explains a lot where I'm coming from. Nothing related to any kind of electrical engineering where I was born. So the message here behind is please be open-minded. Where you come from does not define where you're going. Then I worked for 20 years in a research institute, so not a university, but a research institute in France. And I've started doing some analog design, then mixed signal design, then digital design. Then I've done a lot of low power design, and I become a research director. Before, moving in 2018 to Stanford as a visitor for some time there. I think 2018 has been kind of an interesting year for me. That same year, I came back to CA Lady because my real job was there. But then the same year, I went back to Facebook in the Bay Area to start the job I'm doing today as the Silicon Research Director for Facebook Reality Labs and the Silicon Organization. So that is interesting, and that is just showing that sometimes we need to also keep eyes open on opportunities and don't be really decided very clearly on exactly what we want to do. I think that's also extremely important to find a job that you are open-minded on what you think could fit you, and also sometimes believe recruiters that they're going to find in you something that you that you may be a good fit for. When the first day I joined Facebook, so we had the onboarding session with everyone, and the guy just sitting next to me was telling me that he interviewed for a totally different role. So that guy was an architect in New York, building all the tall buildings, and he was coming at Facebook for something totally different. So obviously he interviewed for being, for helping building buildings for Facebook, and he ended up working at Instagram for a very specific thing. Wow. And really the recruiters really helped him in believing that he could do that. So just because I was preparing that yesterday, I reached out to him, and he's really happy in his role, extremely successful. He's not doing at all building architectures now. So that is really interesting. So Facebook, you probably know Facebook mission. We work on bringing the world closer together. Originally, we are a social network. At Facebook Reality Labs specifically, we build the tools to feel more connected anytime. We build the future of the mobile phone. We really think that the deliver those tools, the need has grown, obviously, this past year, where we were all being socially distanced and physically separated from our colleagues and family. And we've seen how the technology has bridged distances in many ways, which really reaffirms that what we do is essential work that has allowed us to stay productive, learn, have fun, but it hasn't filled the void of the social presence, really. So the idea of Reality Labs is really to develop this innovation. We work on the next compute platform that will really improve the social presence and drive a complete paradigm shift in how humans interact with computers. I think that's the idea. So my specific job is to work on augmented reality glasses. So the idea is to be able to give you a kind of mix between the real world and the digital world. And the idea is really to feel more, being more present, connect you better with this full social presence. Imagine if all you needed was augmented reality devices that will allow you to be present with your friends, no matter where they are, and that you would be equipped with a contextually aware AR glasses to really help you navigate the world around you. So we are building those devices at Facebook Reality Labs, and a lot of people think that Facebook is hiring only software engineers. So that is not true at all. Facebook Reality Labs is hiring a lot of hardware engineers. The Silicon Organization specifically is really growing, because to really fit all that computation in AR glasses, we need to obviously improve and customize most of the silicon we're building in those glasses. And that's my job. So I'm working on research, but obviously the Silicon Organization is working on products. So if you are a hardware engineer, please don't think that Facebook is a software engineer company only. Our jobs are all posted on Facebook/careers. Same thing, LinkedIn does not work very well. It could work somehow, but really the best place is really to apply for a job. We hire people for their potential to grow, not specifically for their specific skills. That is more true when we hire very senior people because we are looking for a specific expertise. But for junior people, we really look at your capacity to communicate, to work with others, to solve complex problems. So please, if you're seeing that some skills are not totally fitting your experience because you are young professionals, this is totally fine. And also something that I wanted to mention is that I've seen a lot in the past years, a different behavior between men and women in front of job descriptions. So usually men, they apply even if they only check 1 or 2 boxes in the skills requirements, and women, they will never apply if they do not check all the boxes on skills requirements. Please don't do that. We are trying to remove as much as possible the main requirements in our job descriptions. But really, again, we hire people for their potential to grow, communicate, and work with others. I think that's it for me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Edith. And thanks for sharing your personal journey and a lot of details about Facebook. I think those are very useful for our candidates and young professionals. All right. So how about you, Eric? So you've been in the industry for many years. And what's your view on the industry job hunt?
Okay. Thank you. Let me get my timer going. Okay. So before I go into what you need to do to conquer this task, I need to put out the assumptions, the disclaimers, and of course state the unstated. The assumption is your goal really should be to find a happy and rewarding and productive place in the world. Okay? You need to figure out what that is. I'm an engineer, so I'm really happy when I'm solving complex problems. I assume that since you're on this webinar, you're like me. If that isn't the case, then maybe the advice doesn't work so well. It is important to figure out what your work life is going to be. It's a whole lot of your time. If that's not what you enjoy doing, then the lives of quiet desperation have been studied extensively in past literature, and you don't really need to repeat that. Okay. Disclaimer, I've been doing this for well over 40 years. Some of my perspective may be dated. Some of it, I think, is pretty well informed. However, it is my opinion. And then last of all, the unstated. Everything, if you understand it well enough, is really complicated. Remember that for finding a job, for doing a job, for playing nice with the other children. If you work hard, if you don't skip steps, if you use shortcuts, once you know how to do it the hard way, then things seem to work out. If you don't do those things, then that's how Murphy slips in and gets to you. Dunning-Kruger is a concept. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's a good thing to keep in mind when you're interacting with others and you want to think about how you're coming across. Okay. So getting noticed, how to keep your resume out of the reject pile. So this is really for the engineering world, which is where I've always lived. Engineering companies want people who know how to make working products. Okay. If you don't know how, they want people who will be able to figure out how, because that's what keeps them busy and keeps them in business. Working in an engineering company means the schedules get crazy sometimes. If you don't enjoy that, then there's a really good chance you'll quit. And quitting is really not what they're hiring you for. Likewise, you have to play nice with everyone else. Otherwise, other people will quit. One of the key things about learning how to make teams work is that it's rare to find somebody who is so productive and brilliant that it's acceptable if they chase away 2 other people. So you really have to play nice. Okay, your resume is the first clue that the company gets as to whether you might be one of these people they're looking for. So first you have to check all the boxes that say you went to school, you can use a spell checker, you're organized, stuff like that. That's easy, okay? Everything else is about projects, okay? all the projects you've worked on, whether they were in school, whether they were at home, whether they were with a team of other people because you're a maker, if you were an intern somewhere, all of these things are projects, okay? Your projects are what give them most of the information that they need to figure out if you would fit in well. So it's really important to list everything. And then last of all, it's okay to drop a hint that you are a person, that you have a life. Don't overdo it. Okay, so your resume got you an interview. So you need to do your homework, okay? You should be in the position where doing your homework is just something you regularly do. Okay, there are two pieces to the homework you need to do. First is you really have to know your work, okay? They picked you because they really liked the resume. On the resume were all these projects that you worked on. You have to know everything about those projects, okay? When I would interview people, I'd pick the most interesting project to me, and I would start digging in and asking them questions. And you really have to be able to answer the most arcane question. Why did you decide to do this? Did that work? Did it break? How did you fix it? Okay, so everything you learned. The other pieces are the ones that, of course, you know, and you weren't going to talk about, but those are also important, okay? Things like team dynamics. How did you get everybody working in the same direction? What did you do about, you know, the drivers versus the hitchhiker problem? What did you do when there wasn't enough time and you needed to sleep? And then finally, what would you do if you needed to repeat the exercise? How would you make it work better? Okay, the second part is knowing everything about the industry. Okay, you need to understand what the company's looking for. Okay, not that you're going to quote it back to them, but you're going to look at everything through that lens. So what has been successful for them? What's their future? How do they compete? Okay, are they a low price organization? Or are they a high status? What's the history of the field? Who started it? Okay, what do you know the name of the guy who invented this particular circuit? Okay, that shows that this is your world. Okay, all important things. Okay, interviews are about questions. Most of the questions are going to be their questions. Their questions are looking for answers in a couple of dimensions. The previous panelists just sort of covered a lot of the behavioral interview pieces. Technical questions also have a lot of layers. Technical correctness is only one of them, okay? When I ask somebody a why question, I get to find out what their depth is, okay? If their depth was, that's what everybody else always does, then that's interesting. That shows you read the literature. If it was, I wanted to try something, that shows me a few other things. Then I can sort of explore and find out how you got there, why you got there. You want to talk about what you learned in the process of working through that project. If you didn't learn anything, then it's going to kind of suggest you didn't care. And that's probably something both you and any potential employer wants to think about. Okay, you're also going to get questions about things you know nothing about, okay? And those aren't to make you feel bad. Those are to see how you think through things and how you deal with questions, okay? This is engineering, okay? Most of the time, you're trying to figure things out you don't know the answer to, okay? The goal in engineering is to get close and to have a plan to get closer if you need to, okay? It's not like academia where the most wonderful possible goal is a closed form expression to answer something. In engineering, it's perfectly fine if all you did was a numerical solution. It's a little better if you could get some intuition. That'll help you explain it to somebody else. But you need to be able to progress to an answer. So you need to start with breaking it down into a few pieces. You need to understand any snaps of the relationships that you can figure out and then beat on them a little bit more. Figure out, is this going to end up square law? Is this going to end up linear? Okay, and then last of all, you have to show that you're somebody who tests your results, okay? You don't just figure something out and say, oh, this is great. if you didn't come up with a test case or two so that you can try it out, even if it's an extreme limit, show that you're somebody who checks. That counts a lot. Okay, and then there are questions, which are your questions. There's two groups in the interview. You're going to want to find out what the project environment at this company is like. Okay, if projects are really what engineers do, then of course that's what you're going to ask about. So what are they making? What role would you get? What kind of timelines do you work under? What kind of resources do you have? Are their labs really big? Are their compute resources infinite? Do they have infinite software licenses? All of these are really nice things to have. And of course, what's the experience level of the rest of the team? Do they have really senior people you can learn from? So these are the things, these show that you're actually looking to actually be part of a team that's making great projects. Then, of course, there are the after you get an offer questions. Okay, that's when you talk about benefits and time off and so on and so forth. Don't really raise those in the interview. You don't have an offer, and it kind of confuses the question. And then there's one last question for yourself, and that's, is this something I want to do for a reasonable period of time? Maybe it's just something you want to do for a period of time just to make some money and do something else. Or is this something I just don't want to do? Really, work is too many hours a day. This is engineering. It's usually like 50 of them a day. A week. And you're going to have to be reasonably happy. So if it's not what you want to do, don't do it. If there is a chance you might want to, give it a shot. It usually works out pretty well. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric. And I want to echo on the last point that so many candidates, when they prepare for an interview, they usually ignore the part that what questions they should ask to the companies. They might prepare well for the questions they got, but they didn't pay much attention to the questions they should ask for the for the companies. So I think thanks for bringing that up, and I think that's very important. Then last but not least, Matt, what's your view on facing the industry job hunt?
Thank you. And thanks to all the previous panelists for their presentations. I'd like to see what I can add to this really important topic.
Sure.
So I think as I get to that, I think the very quick personal journey part may give some insights into what I can help contribute here. I think something a little bit unique is over my 17 and a half, about 18 years of experience, I've kind of covered the gamut of different, basically the possible paths you can choose. So I've been in the big company, the startup, and in research groups, and also product groups. And I can give some insights into what it means to be in these different positions and what it takes to get there and be successful. And so my journey was I've always been interested in programming, but from a very early age I was interested in computer vision. And computer vision, for those who are not familiar with it, is just the ability for the machine to basically interpret an image or video just like ultimately like a human could. And so that's always the goal. And I've been kind of obsessed with that for as long as I can remember. And I as an undergrad, I took some initiative and started to actually work with my professor and do research. And at about 20 years old, I got my first computer vision paper published in IEEE CVPR. And then from that, I got some attention from Microsoft, and I went to Microsoft Research, and I then, I saw in total about 10 years in Microsoft, and I most of the time was in. So I got the kind of world-class research and world-class engineering experience. And then after a decade of that, I branched out on my own and started Malong Technologies, which is a AI computer vision company focused on solving problems for retailers. And it's one of the best in class for that field. And in this startup, I built a research team from scratch and also a engineering team. And so I can give some insights into this whole all these possibilities, and so actually I want to just dive in a little bit about and we can talk more about this, and if you guys have more questions about the differences of research and product. So the kind of common differences that you may be interested in if you're trying to decide which path. First, I'd like to say that. The path you choose is not you're not in one road only. You can switch between them, product and research. Actually, it's typically more common to start if you'd like to do both. Start in research and then go to product. It's less common to go from product back to research, but it does happen. So in general, these are some of the common differences. So in a product team, you're very often going to be in a multidisciplinary group. So you're going to work with not just, if you're a software engineer, you're not just going to be a software engineer. You're going to be product managers and project managers and QA and all sorts of different roles. You're going to be adopting rigorous, hopefully rigorous engineering practices. And if it's not rigorous engineering practices, you probably want to ask about that, and you're going to be obsessed, hopefully, with the customer and with the goal of going big, shipping large, hopefully, and making customers happy and making business impact. That's typically the mindset in a product team. In a research team, you're more often going to be somewhat more independent. You're going to have more open-ended projects, more experimentation. And depending on the type of research group, you may be working on extremely hard problems, working to advance the state of the art, and you're going to be doing research activities that are common, such as attending your favorite IEEE conference, hopefully publishing, collaborating, etc. And so these are the core differences, and definitely it's possible to experience both. And I do actually believe that there's benefit to cross-discipline learning, and so even as in the research team, to be good at programming is going to be valuable, and vice versa. To have in a product team to have more algorithmic understanding is also quite valuable for your career. And in terms of these are just some high-level tips, for in the hiring process and also advancing your career. And these tips are echoes to some of the things that were already said, but I'd like to highlight them. So although my experience has been pretty hardcore tech, I found that even in the most advanced technical groups or career path, it's actually advancing is not really all about your technical ability. Your soft skills really play a role, and that's seen in your personality and your attitude and your ability to communicate, take initiative, collaborate, work with others, play nice with others. These are things that really are going to be scanned for at the interview time, but also going to be helpful in progressing your career. So if you're ultra technical and you just want to be a kind of a lone wolf, and you don't play nice with others, but your tech skills are awesome, it's actually not going to be that great. Working in a team, you have to have the team dynamic to make things work, and so that's kind of one of the important points. Don't just overfit your tech. Really put some energy into your soft skills, and just about personality. One of the things to point out is just the humility aspect does go a long way. So we do want to, it depends on the role and the seniority level, but of course achievements are important, but it's not the only thing. You can't always achieve major success, hit home runs all the time. We do have interest in your what didn't work well, and but in particular, it's not just what didn't work well, but what you learned in the process. What you learned is really important, and during the interview and also within your career, it's a very important ability to be able to admit when you don't know something and ask for help. So sometimes when you're in these really elite groups or employment opportunities, you're going to think, well, I got to fake it till I make it, or I got to always looks I'm on top of my business. I'm always on the A game. But actually, we all know if you're junior, you're probably not always on top of it all. And it's very important actually for your interview where you make claims that be careful on what you claim. We can be disappointed if you claim something and you don't really know it. So being able to admit when you don't know something, have humility, and being able to ask for help are important things in your career and getting in. So that's all I'd like to share for now, and I can help answer questions as we go forward in this talk.
All right, thank you so much, Matt. And I think it's really a great point that soft skills are also very important for even technical positions, and it is something I think as young professionals and students definitely want to gain. All right, thank you all for our panelists for sharing your statement. Let's Q&A session now. So the first question is that so we often get questions that if it's good to switch between different companies or different industry, will this degrade their source in interview or not, or will this hurt their reputation? So what's your views on that? So maybe Kimberly, you want to start?
Sure. So early on in your career, I think it is important to establish sort of a good long track record for your first postgraduate position. Stay where you're at for 3 to 5 years whenever you can. That's easier, I think, to do in a big company. Because there may be more opportunities to stay within the company, but if you get bored with a particular product or whatever you're working on, you can move into a different area. So that's something that you have to kind of keep in mind as you're making the decision between, do I want to go to a small company, a startup, or a really big company? Because you do want to establish a track record. One of the things we hear a lot from our interns is that career centers are encouraging folks to have their internships at different companies. And I'm sort of a mixed feeling about that. We like our interns to come back and try a different role, for example, so that we can build and maintain that relationship and continue to invest in each other and then offer them a full-time position when they graduate. So you have to really kind of just make your own best decision about whether you want to try and go back to the same company but in a different role, or if you want to try, going to a different company. Like I said, I have my personal preference, but you have to make your own choices there. And it's certainly not that if I have an intern one summer who goes somewhere else the next summer, I'm not going to consider them, for a full-time role when they graduate. It's just easier for me in terms of planning and talking to managers and such if I've had the person with us for a couple of summers and can say we absolutely should make this person an offer. So that's kind of my point of view on that.
All right, thank you. So Edith, you have some other opinions on this?
Yes, so it was about internships, right?
No, it's about like switching companies frequently.
Switching
Is
companies.
it good or not? Or bad?
Yeah, I'd like to give an answer that is not really only US centric, because I think things are totally different depending on where you are in the world. And even probably within a country. Obviously, here in the Bay Area, we know that people switch companies a lot. I think at some point, it's also about a company culture and a country culture. Company culture, if you fit the culture and you work well with other people, I think happiness is more important than switching companies. But at some point, if you feel like you should do something else, go and do something else. In Europe, for example, it can be totally different. I think people, they switch companies way less than here, and that is totally fine. So I would say, do not try to look at the standards and do what you think is good for you, and be happy, because that's the most important. If you work with nice people, for me, that's more valuable than switching companies all the time. But that's my personal opinion.
All right, thank you. Eric, you want to add something?
Yeah. So that's an interesting point as to the geographic changes in this. So I'm actually an East Coast person. And the style on the East Coast is also to stay places a lot longer. So far as hiring people, I'm an analog guy, and it takes a really long time to train people up well in analog mixed signal. And it was always terribly frustrating to have someone leave after only a couple of years, when they were just probably getting to the point where they were seriously productive. So I'm a big fan of staying until such time you either stop learning, in which case you got to go do something else, because otherwise you'll be unhappy, or if you're unhappy for some other particular reason and you can't resolve it, then move on. But otherwise, if you're happy, if you're learning, then leaving for money means you're going to trade happiness and learning for money, which probably isn't going to work out well. I
see. Great, thank you. So Matt, since you are in AI industry, and I think you often see people like switching companies more often than other industry probably. So what's your view on this?
No, definitely. So there's the game of, you get 20% more, 30% more in this job, and just switch and kind of boosting up the salary, right? That happens all the time. Actually, it's just for AI industry, it's kind of just a common thing. It's not what what I'm looking for. Obviously, it's I would the previous companies, and if I do see a really quick switch, less than a year level several times, or it does raise some concern that could be answered. I mean, there could be legitimate reasons why that happened, and it's fine. And I've hired people who've had that, and it worked out fine. But definitely, I would prefer longer stays. But it is AI industry. It is a kind of normal thing here.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for all the great points. And another, I guess, somewhat related question for all of the panelists is that when you are looking for a candidate, do you actually, so firstly, do you look at their degrees, either PhD or master or bachelor's? And secondly, do you look at which university they graduated from? So maybe this time, Eric, you want to start?
Okay. So, okay. In general, bachelor's degrees are usually a category in and of themselves. Once you've reached master's or PhD, there's a certain blending. And it may be that the PhD, which was a lot more depth, was not exactly where you wanted to use it. So it's actually a little bit more like some extra experience. So far I'm sorry, the second piece of it was
So
the second.
Do you look at which university?
So which university? Yeah. So
yeah,
a lot of people do. I actually don't think that's the best idea. I've hired great people from universities which didn't have particularly good programs, and I have hired some pretty poor people from the top three. I guess that says something about my interviewing skills, maybe, but I'm not the only choice maker. But I think it certainly can help to have a really good university, because that may get your resume into the have a second look pile instead of not being in the discard pile. But it's only going to get you in the door. You got to have all the skills. You got to have the knowledge. You got to be able to handle an interview. So it helps, but it doesn't win.
I see. All right, thank you. And Kimberly, you want to add something on this one?
I agree with what Eric said, that we don't look at it too closely. It can be a way to get you in the door, but you have to be able to back it up in your interview. What I think the other thing that comes up a lot is, using your university alumni network to get in. It can help that way if the person that you're ultimately interviewing with happens to be an alumni. It can give you a bit of a leg up, but I don't think I don't think it's like super important. And for us, while we have our in the U.S., for example, our 3 main schools that we recruit from, we're also actively reaching out across networks, across platforms, and being more sort of school agnostic. The work that you're putting in, the projects that you're doing, those things I think are more important than potentially what the reputation of the program. So.
All right, thank you. How about Edith? Do you have some opinions?
It's a very
on this?
interesting question for a French person coming in the US. So first, related to the degree, PhD, we look at it when we hire research scientists. Okay, research scientist starts at PhD degree. I would say everything else is totally fine. We accept really diverse degrees here. Regarding schools, I am not biased at all. Whatever is the school a US student is going to apply from. And what is really interesting is that I've seen a lot of my colleagues being extremely biased by this. So we talk about it all together, and I ask them not to be biased and really look at that person, screen them. But I think that's kind of a human behavior. If that person comes from your school or a school has a very high reputation, that is good, but I would say that is not all what we're looking for. So really that bias is existing. As long as we are aware of it, I think we can work with it. So that is, of course, okay, but we need to look broadly, not only to a single school that looks like the school you have imagined is the best one. I think there is way more than that, and people are still people. So I think you're not defined only by your school.
Right. Yeah, totally true. Yeah. So Matt, do you have something to add on?
Yeah, I agree with all that was previously said. I think for AI, it's there's more artifacts, or there's things we look at. If it's a research position, I look at impact on papers. That tells me a lot more. Open source projects. There's very clear impact. And then for engineering, if you really are strong in engineering and you do really well in the interview and have really good experiences. The school doesn't matter that much as long as it's not. I mean, it could be a highlight to raise attention, but it's not a major point at all, actually.
Great. Thank you all. Another question, interesting question we usually get from the young professional is that after, for example, a new grad get their first offer, should they negotiate or not? So even they just have one offer, and then what should they negotiate for? Should they negotiate for title or salary, or other things? So do you guys have some opinions on that? Maybe Kimberly, you want to start?
Sure. So this is a great question, and I get this question all the time. And here's how we look at it. So we hire a lot of new grads every year. Everybody has completed their degree. They've got a decent grade point average. They've got some interesting projects. All of those things are equal. So there's nothing at this stage to differentiate you as a candidate from the next candidate as well. So we bring everybody in at a pretty level playing field. It doesn't make sense for me to pay one person $10,000 more than the next person just because they decided to negotiate. For us, we don't really negotiate, particularly at the bachelor's level and the master's level. Sometimes when we're getting up into the PhD levels, we've got a really competitive student that we're trying to land. We'll negotiate a little more at those levels. But at the bachelor's and master's levels, we don't really negotiate because there's nothing really that sets an individual candidate apart significantly enough for it to make a difference. Now, if you've got another offer in hand that's $2,000 more than I would offer you, yeah, I'll probably do the $2,000. But if I offer you 90 and you come back and say, oh, I'm looking for 115, that's not going to happen. So you have to be really kind of realistic in terms of understanding that the company has done their research, particularly bigger companies, right? Like we participate in salary surveys, we get all this information back. We know what the market will bear on those types of positions. So, and we know, there are some companies who are like a base pay leader, like they're going to offer you a super high salary. And then there are companies that are sort of the middle of the road, and that's where most companies land, right? Is we're going to pay right around the market. And then we look to you to differentiate yourself when you come in and join. So you'll start off at about the same level, and then you'll come in and you'll be a super high performer, so you'll get a higher annual bonus, or you'll get the higher merit increase in your next cycle, and you'll get eligibility for stock grants as an employee. Those things come with performance once we see how you differentiate yourself. But coming in just off the street, you're very smart. But so is everybody else that we're looking at. So is everybody else that we're hiring. So, there's not a lot in terms of what we'll negotiate on. We might, do a little bit of a bump on the base salary, a bit of a bump on a signing bonus. Relocation is pretty easy to negotiate on. If you're moving completely across the country, sure, I'll give you more relocation money than somebody who's moving, 100 miles. So there are a few things that you can negotiate on, but really coming out of university, there's not a lot. And as an intern, don't try to negotiate.
Got you. Yeah, that's important. All right. So Eric, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah. Just being off of when you first phrased the question. Title when you're first coming in, if that really matters, it's probably a negative sign. So it's probably not a very good idea. Other than that, I think Kimberly pretty much nailed everything. The only exception I would mention is I have hired people out of school who had spectacular maker type backgrounds and had project lists that were really impressive. And they were essentially miscategorized as fresh out because they had been busy engineering products for fun. And those were the kind of people that I wanted to make sure I got. So I would treat them a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Great. Matt, you want to add something on this point?
Sorry, I was having a little bit of network issue. Can you please repeat the question?
So yeah, the question is, should that new grad negotiate or not when they got the first offer?
Right. You know, at least in my industry, it's super competitive. So this does happen, but it's appropriate for more senior roles. Yeah, for junior roles, it's mm-hmm. you know, sometimes a negative or not effective really. But for senior roles, yeah, it does happen. It's normal.
Gotcha. Great, thank you. So Edith, you have something to add on this?
Yeah, no, I think everything has been said here for new grad. I know that in the Bay Area, obviously, if you have more than one offer, you may see some compensation package differences even for new grads, but.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you. So yeah, I look at the time. I think this probably concludes the panel discussion of the webinar. So we will now do an audience Q&A session. So as a reminder, please use the Q&A button of your dashboard to ask any questions you have regarding the discussion we had today. So if you have a question to a particular panelist, please state that too. So this session will be led by Professor Carmen Lei. Carmen, floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Tim Wei, for your great moderator. So we will have our first audience question for all panelists. So actually, as Matt suggests, it's quite important to have soft skills compared to technical skills. So especially for the interview. So how important are that actually? And would the interviewers look more at soft skills or technical skills, or are that dependent on the particular job? So maybe Edith, you want to start first on this one?
Yeah, can you just say it again? I don't know, I lost your audio for 1 sec.
The soft skills versus the technical skills during the interview.
Yeah, I just got the beginning of your question. Yeah, so as I said, so at least for Facebook, but I know it's true for many companies, soft skills are very important. The reason for that is that we want you to work with others. We want to make sure that you can share your knowledge, but also learn from others. So if you don't have those soft skills that allow you to collaborate, be good partners, good peers, then that's going to probably be an issue for the team. I'm a strong believer that teamwork is more important than individual work. So really, I think that if you can practice that a little, if you're in a group, work with others, learn how to share your knowledge. I think that's really the most important for me, and specifically at Facebook, because the system we're building is so complex that it's kind of impossible to ignore others' contribution. If you just do your thing and you ignore what are the consequences on the overall system, then that's not going to be efficient. So really, I would say communication and sharing your knowledge is one of the most important skills for me.
Okay, thank you. Maybe Kimberly, any comments on these questions?
Yeah, I agree with what Edith said. The soft skills are very important, and I think that they're at least as equal as your technical skills, if not a little bit more important. Because if you can't work together, if you can't take feedback, if you can't learn from others and share your knowledge with others, if you're just a lone wolf, there's very few places that you're going to fit in, particularly as a new grad. You've got to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to collaborate. You have to be able to work together with others and do so in a way that's positive and affirming and allow everyone in the group to bring their whole selves to work. So you have to be accepting, and you have to be able to work cross-culturally. All of those things are super important, and if you can't do that, then you're not going to last long. I think somebody else said there's nobody that's so important and so good technically that you're going to be allowed to be a jerk and run off other people on the team. That kind of behavior is not okay. So you've got to have those soft skills for sure.
Okay, and Eric?
Yeah, I think it's an and function. I wouldn't hire anybody who only knew circuits and couldn't do a little bit of coding. Likewise, I wouldn't hire somebody who could do circuits and coding who couldn't play nice with everybody else. So I think all of these things, you got to hit all of them to a reasonable extent, and then you get hired. If you miss one, then you probably have to find somewhere else.
Okay, and Matt?
Yeah, just one practical note about this question is in terms of the interview, how are soft skills tested or looked at? I just want the initial interviews are just really focused on technical, and then as you get the interviewer at your we call team fit or as appropriate. Your personality matching with what's expected. So yes, you will be looked at least at the interview, maybe earlier as well.
Okay. So we move on to our next questions. So how important is having a LinkedIn profile to the job search? And if a candidate does not have a LinkedIn profile, is that looked upon unfavorably by the HR or the hiring manager during the selection process? Maybe this time we can start with Eric. Eric, you hear me?
I'm sorry, I was muted. So just about everybody nowadays does have a LinkedIn profile, and that is handy. It's not required, okay? Some people just have a different sensibility about social media, so that's fine. I need a resume, and I need it to give me the information I want, and I need contact information. That's really all I use LinkedIn for. So if you can get me those pieces of information, I don't really care how they got there.
Okay, and maybe we can, Edith, what's your comment about that?
Yeah, exactly. Same comment. As long as we have a resume that is well written and we clearly understand the path, that's fine. And we don't check either if you have a Facebook account. If your Facebook profile is extremely active, yeah, no worries. We don't check that either.
Okay, and Matt, what about you?
Yeah, LinkedIn profile, it doesn't matter that much, but if it's a senior hire, I do like to look at their LinkedIn profile, see if there's connections I have, because I do care about the scientific community. See a community connection, people I know, that's helpful. It's not at all required, but it's something I do like, at least for senior hires.
Okay, and Kimberly?
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty much covered it. It's not required. We don't check LinkedIn or Facebook, but I do think that, as Matt said, as you get into a more senior position, then it's a good idea because of those shared connections with others in the industry and that kind of thing. And I know that our experienced hire recruiters do use LinkedIn a lot, but ultimately, it's just one tool in our toolbox of how we go about finding candidates. The resume and being able to get a hold of you are more important than that.
Okay. And then we have a question for Eric. So what would be your suggestion for a PhD student in the area of analog and mixed signal IC design so that he will be prepared to work as an IC designer in the industry?
Okay. So again, I think I've given a clue to this before. The number of projects that you've worked on and the amount of depth that you can demonstrate when you're talking about them is what's key. So there's a couple of little facets to that. One common way of looking at it, maybe common, is that you don't really have creativity come out of thin blue air. Creativity is taking something from way left field and applying it to a problem in front of you. If you don't have a way left field, then you're probably not going to be creative. So you want to have some breadth. You want to show that you've worked in a biomed project and you worked in a ultra low power electronics project and you did some RF and you did a few things over here in some strange particle detector. If you have all of those things in background, then the next time somebody says, hey, can you figure out how to make this kind of widget, which is what analog types do, then you'll have a big toolbox to apply things to. So get some breadth, have lots of projects, and that will turn you into somebody who is just incredibly invaluable as an analog designer.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question for Matt. So Matt, as you are working in the AI industry, what points should the candidates consider when entering the AI field and choosing between its roles?
Good question. So in AI, there's very often you'll hear several roles like research scientist, data scientist, machine learning engineer, and sometimes there's confusion actually about what these different roles mean. Maybe I'll clarify that and talk about quickly the trend. So research scientist is focused on more on the core algorithms. Data scientist is now more like a data analyst or looking at analyzing the data, getting analytics about the data, preparing data, and building some initial models. And machine learning engineer is actually more of a typical software engineer who's focused on building real products from machine learning, and does train the model, but also deploys the model. And we're seeing now machine learning engineer, actually the salaries are rising, actually rising above data scientist, and machine learning engineer is a really hot role now, and I think it's that direction. And the idea is really taking skills from all of the above, and I think it's one of the strong positions. I think Airbnb has a good breakdown. They actually call it different tracks. So they have inference, they have algorithms, and analytics, and that basically breaks down to data scientist, machine learning engineer, and research scientist. So those are the kind of distinctions between them.
Okay, thank you. And so we have a final question for Edith. So actually, that's one is asking about the Facebook Reality Labs. So do the Facebook Reality Labs do analog IC design, and do you publish papers in the major SSCS conferences?
Yeah, so we do a lot of analog design, and if you look at so I just replied also in the chat. If you look at the Facebook carriers and you look for analog design, you're gonna find a lot of openings there. As I said, we are customizing most of the digital and analog chips in the AR devices. So yeah, we are growing a lot in that space as well. Regarding publication, so my group is doing research, so we are publishing in SSCS. As you have noticed in my presentation, I joined the end of 2018, and it takes time to build silicon to be published in major conferences. So I think this year we're going to be more ready to publish more papers in those conferences. But yeah, we publish at Facebook. It's a strong culture to publish and open source some of our stuff. It comes from the software culture, which is really good. So yeah, there are obviously some limitations where we're not going to publish a product, but my team is doing research, so we publish our research. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Edith, and all other panelists for their excellent answers about the questions. Now I pass the mic back to Xin-Fei.
All right. Thanks, Carmen, and thank you for all the audience for asking excellent questions. And thank you for our panelists for addressing those questions. So this concludes the audience Q&A session. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank again Kimberly, Edith, Eric, and Matt for sharing your insights and perspectives on the topic of acing the industry job hunt. And your suggestions and opinions will inspire and guide the audience about their job search and career plans. So as noted earlier, the on-demand link for today's event will be emailed to all registrants in about 2 hours. And before you leave, don't forget to complete our feedback survey via the Teal survey tool at the bottom of your screen. And thank you again for all the panelists, and thank you for all the audience for your attendance and for your questions. And have a great day. Bye.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.